I am going to be making a pattern for a pointy court shoe, or pump as our friends in the US call it. And as you can see, I've already taped up my pointy last, and I've put on my center line and my back line and my back height point. And we're gonna do a super simple pattern here. So I am gonna just dive straight in and draw on a classic court shoe. I always start around the vamp area here and just do like a nice opening, sort of like that. Once you're happy with the curve you've got at the front, go from your back height point and just take a really nice sharp line all the way down the side. Just like that. And now all we have to do is figure out how we want them to join in that area. I like to sort of follow the feather edge of the last to create a sort of natural feeling curve. And then you can always go ahead and rub out your old lines. Okay, that's looking really nice to me. I might just put the slightest curve in the top here, just so that it feels like a little bit more like it's flowing with the shape of the last. Okay, so it's subtle, but I actually think that's looking really beautiful. And then here's the tricky bit. We want to try and match that on the other side. Okay, that's looking really beautiful now on both sides. Now, before you move on, I would really recommend you sort of look at the whole thing. I really like to look at it at that kind of angle so that I'm looking right down the sides to make sure that they're looking even. And I always look from a bird's eye view as well, just to see whether I like the overall shape. It almost looks like I could sort of bring it out here a little bit, but just by a fraction. Millimeters really make a difference in footwear. I do have to add a little side seam in here as well, so I'm gonna do that on the inside because it's the most discreet spot. And I like to just go straight down at that kind of angle. Maybe I'll move it a little bit. This is a trick that my friend Lizzie, who runs Shoe Girls Studios, taught me. And she said if you go down so it's sort of the shape of a T, it looks the best. So we'll do what Lizzie says. And there is our little seam there. And I think what she meant by that is don't have a super sharp angle either way. Try and keep it like a nice clean T. Okay, I'm gonna take my craft knife. So I'm gonna cut through my design lines, just digging it right into the last. And then cut straight down the side seam. And I'm also gonna cut a 3/4 back seam. So I'm just cutting a dart about 3/4 of the way up. To about there. I was considering doing a full back seam, that's why I hesitated there, but I think a 3/4 back seam will be better with this design. Just before I take it off the last, it's also worth me mentioning, I want this shoe to be quite low at the front and quite like sexy and open, but if you would prefer a bit more coverage, then you can draw your lines a little bit higher and make the top line of the shoe a little bit more closed on there as well. Totally up to you. Okay, I already thought ahead here and taped 2 bits of paper together because I knew my pattern piece wasn't gonna fit on 1 piece of paper. Okay, so following the top line and let it fall naturally like that. And then I just like to use my pencil to really flatten it out as much as you can. You'll see here at this back section, those pieces there don't want to lay flat, so I'm just gonna cut a few little snips in there and then lay that flat as well. Fabulous. Now let's put our allowances in. I've got my little ruler here and I'm gonna start by putting in my folding allowance. I'm actually gonna be doing this shoe in a fabric, in a denim to be precise, which means I am 100% gonna need to fold my top line because otherwise it would fray. So I'm going to be putting in a 5mm fold allowance around the whole top line, and that's also going to double up as my trimming allowance for my lining. I'm also going to put a 5mm seam allowance on my little side seam there, on both sides. And last but not least, we are going to put a 2cm or 20mm allowance all around the feather edge, and that is going to be our lasting allowance. You'll notice that I haven't put any allowance at all on that back seam, because I'm going to stitch that together like a dart, and I don't need any allowance there because I want it to be quite tight so that I can really stretch it over the last. Okay, so I'll label this fold/trim, seam, seam, and lasting. I will put a little notch in here to indicate that that is the inside of the shoe, but I also know that's the inside anyway because that's where my seam is, and I'm going to use the same pattern for my upper and my lining, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that out and we are good to go. And that's the pattern all done.